and a very warm welcome to another edition of Passions from the Passions Project. And today I'm going to be talking to an amazing lady, and she's called Tilly Green, and she's going to introduce herself in a second. And we're going to have a chat about her particular passion, which is very interesting and something that we've never had on Passions to date, which is not bad when we're up to nearly 90 interviews. So, Tilly, a very warm welcome to Passions. Tell us who you are and what your passion is.
Thank you very much, Phil. What a lovely introduction. So my name is Tilly Green, and I am an opera singer whose passion is both singing and travelling, which I get to do a lot combined in my job, which is great.
Brilliant. Okay. So what sort of singing do you do then?
Lots of opera, lots of classical opera particularly. So Mozart, Handel, Baroque, all of those kind of things. Recently, I've ventured out into the contemporary opera world, which is sometimes a scary place, but it's been really, really great to explore new parts of opera and see which direction it's going as well.
So I've got to ask you the question then. Let's go back. Let's go back to the journey, the history of this whole thing. I suppose two questions in a sense here. First of all, at what age was singing something that you got passionate about? And then, was opera an early passion, or did it develop over time?
Great. So my earliest memory of falling in love with singing was when I was about 4 or 5 years old, and I remember singing The Little Mermaid at school. And I got to dress up as Ariel, and I had my fin, and I got to sit on a rock and sing Part of Your World. And it was just the moment where I just felt so electrified, even at such a young age. And I loved performing in front of people. I loved seeing their reactions. I loved becoming a different character completely and kind of leaving Tilly Green in the wings. And so then from there, I actually became a cathedral chorister at the age of 7. And I did that right up until the age of 18. So took my choir robes on and my Little Mermaid fin off. But originally I wasn't interested in opera at all. I was very interested in musical theatre. I really wanted to dance and act and be on stage, but my heart was very much telling me yes, musical theatre, and my voice was telling me absolutely not, go and do opera. So it was originally at the beginning a compromise of, well, I can still act, I can still be on stage, it's just not, quite what I wanted to do. But I've definitely fallen in love with it over the years, the more I've got to know it and the more I've developed into it.
So were you kind of a little bit, dare I use the word, frustrated that your voice didn't lend itself more to musical theatre? Or was it like, oh, damn? Or was it like, were you okay with it?
It was very much a mixture. At the beginning, I thought everyone else in my class really wants to do musical theatre. It's the cool route. I don't want to be the boring, classical chorister opera singer. It wasn't very fun for my peers. But actually, it was my music teachers were particularly inspiring, and they made it into an amazing, fun thing to explore. And I'm very grateful to them for pushing me to do it, because now I wouldn't have it any other way. But there were definitely frustrations at the beginning.
Yeah, I could understand that. I mean, was I guess Charlotte Church is the person that everybody springs to mind to people of a certain age, but you're younger, so was Charlotte Church around when you were doing what you were doing?
No, not so much, I don't think. No, not so much.
Yeah, because she inspired a lot of people when it came to opera. I think she brought opera to the mainstream in a sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And I have to ask this, actually. You might not know the answer to this, and obviously please say if you don't. But is it something to do with the vocal cords that means that you can sing opera better than, say, in this conversation, musical theatre? Is it the way the vocal cords are constructed, or is it a lot more complex than that?
It's a mixture of things. Because I started training at such a young age as a classical singer in terms of being a chorister, I started training those muscles in a certain way at a very young age. And once they form, they're very hard to then change, because in musical theatre, you get a lot of belting singing and you take your chest voice up incredibly high. And as a chorister, you're taught to absolutely not do that. So I don't know how much of it is kind of anatomy and how much of it is mental. I definitely think that it was because I started so young on the classical route that then whatever it was saying, no, don't don't belt, stay in your head voice, stay being a chorister.
Is it something then that's in the family then, Tilly? Have you got a string of relatives that are great singers, or are you relatively unique in the DNA line?
I better not show them this interview because I'm going to say absolutely not. They cannot sing. My mum and dad told me that they used to be in a choir, and you know, my dad sings some hymns at church, but they're definitely not singers. No, my oldest brother is a good singer, and my middle brother is musical in other ways. He plays the saxophone, but all of us kind of came out of nowhere, really. Especially me, being the fourth child. I think it was a bit scary, really, when I started to sing, sing so much.
Yeah, it's interesting that, isn't it? We've actually got a bit of a glitch on the internet, but I can hear you very clearly. So if anybody's getting any kind of glitches on Tilly's camera, don't worry about it because we can obviously hear her very clearly. That's the internet for you. That's just the way it goes. So I'm going to crack on anyway because it's not affecting the interview. So I mean, I found that really interesting in a sense because you know, you would have thought, it seemed, you get the impression that there's lots, maybe a great grandma was brilliant at singing and then it skipped a few generations.
I reckon.
So obviously we talk about a lot on the Passions Project about people making a living out of their passion. Sometimes it's in a business, sometimes it's a talent, sometimes it's a career. So at what point did you start to think, you know what, I can actually make a living out of this singing gig?
Again, it was surprisingly young. Going back to the chorister, I'm going to talk about that so much. The chorister days, you already get paid as a chorister, so you're already kind of in that mindset of, oh, hold on, I could make a career out of this. And then I started doing more professional work and professional oratorio concerts is how it started for me. And then did a lot more studying and then eventually started to get some professional opera contracts, be it in London or abroad, which has been an amazing journey, really, from 7-year-old in a choir robe.
So was there ever a moment, because I know obviously you've been out to Australia and you and I have been liaising for the last few weeks, haven't we, on that classic WhatsApp thing to try and figure out when we could get to do this. And it was always quite awkward. And I think we originally talked about trying to get it done while you were in Australia and with the time differences and everything. So was there ever a moment when you were in Australia where you thought, blimey, I can't believe I'm doing this and I'm actually doing something that I love for a living, and here I am in Australia being paid to do it? Or do you just kind of take it in your stride?
No. I mean, imposter syndrome was a huge thing right from the moment I got the offer of the contract, all the way through to getting on the plane and living there for a bit. And it was terrifying at first, kind of stepping into the first rehearsal and thinking they all probably know each other or know of each other because they all live in Melbourne and it's a small, musical community. I'm coming in as a rogue English woman.
A pom. You're coming in as a pom.
Thankfully, the cricket wasn't on at that point, so I was a little bit safer. But no, it was scary. But at the same time, I'd always wanted to go to Australia as a place, and it was a great excuse to be able to finally visit a country that I wouldn't have had the chance to otherwise. And as soon as I started getting into the rehearsals, it was like being at Disneyland. It was just, I'm loving what I'm doing, and I'm in a country that I love, and I'm being paid to do something that I really enjoy. It's amazing.
Yes, there'll be a lot of people very jealous, I would imagine, right now listening to this. But I'm glad you mentioned that, actually, because I think as people know who watch these interviews, I never do any kind of pre-conversations, which is very unprofessional. But I always think that they flow better if you're going along, and I get more out of it as well because I enjoy listening to the story for the first time as well. Yeah. So it's interesting you should raise imposter syndrome because this comes up a lot in these interviews, an awful lot. They don't always use the term, but that whole confidence and self-belief thing is massive. Was there any kind of did you do anything to try and overcome that imposter syndrome, or was it really just doing it and getting a reaction from the audience that took you out of that zone?
Yeah, it was very much the reaction from other people. So the reaction when I told things, you know, like my parents or my music teachers or my conservatoire that I'd been offered, and instead of thinking, why me? Why is this happening to me? They were really nurturing about it, and they were really supportive, and they said it was a great and positive thing. And gradually, if enough people tell you that, and you start to eventually believe it. And I started looking at the music in preparation for going out, and thought, yeah, okay, you know, I've been chosen for a reason. I can do this. This is okay. But it took a while. And actually my partner's incredibly musical and understands all of these things. So we had a good chat over a bottle of wine, and it's nothing that can't be solved when that happens.
So what you're saying is that part of your process was to get drunk to get over imposters.
I'm saying it helped.
Yeah, I've made a note of that. Gets drunk to get over. That's your top tip for the day. Get drunk in order to overcome. Yeah. For any youngsters watching this, please do not take that literally. It's just my sense of humor.
Do not
Fantastic.
try this at home.
Yeah, exactly. I need to put a caption at the bottom, don't I? Do not try this at home. Okay, so tell me what the sorts of music then that you prefer. You know, I mean, obviously everybody's got music they prefer, but is there certain songs or types of song that you either suit your voice or you just love at another level?
I love all of the big operas, the Mozarts, the Puccinis, everything that has a beautiful love story, a dramatic line, things that are just very lyrical and very swoony. That's where I really love, because I really love getting into a character. The acting part for me is, you know, once I've done all the technical work in the studio, I then get on stage and it's all about the character development. And so if there's a good, juicy story, I'll tend to love it, whatever it is, and be that contemporary or classical. But at the moment, I've mainly explored classical, apart from in recent weeks.
So I have to ask you the question then, because of the stereotypical way I look at classical opera. Have you ever worn a hat with horns on it, like a
Unfortunately,
Viking?
no. I've had to wear some rogue things, but I've not yet got my Viking hat.
All right, I just wondered.
In the times to come, I may be graced.
You see, if somebody says to you now in the future, and we need you to wear this costume for this opera, and it's a hat with horns on it, you'll look back to this interview and you go, right, now I know what he meant.
I'll message you straight away.
I think it's something to do possibly with some of the Scandinavian influences of opera in some scenarios, and as I say, it's very stereotypical and could actually be a myth. And in fact, I'm probably going to look it up when we're done this interview. It might just be a myth, but
no, it's in Wagner's The Valkyries. The Valkyries were
that sounds familiar. Yeah.
Yeah.
And have you got any idea why people turn to opera as a music genre? Which I know is a very difficult question to ask, because at the end of the day, that's like saying, well, why does somebody like rock and somebody likes new romantic songs? But have you come across any reasons why you think people engage with or connect with opera more than others?
I think if they allow themselves to go and watch it, I think the initial step to going to the theatre and sitting for your first opera is always quite intimidating, and there are ways around that. But I think once you've got to that point, it's a matter of it being so visceral and so real. So the kind of thing you do, it's completely mirrors just how life is. You know, when you're distressed, it's always the most tense, high singing that the opera has. And you also then go into chest voice, and it's like a guttural scream. And it really, really mirrors, you know, the emotions that we feel that often I think people dumb down. And it sounds so cheesy, but it is completely a way of escaping and having the extremes of every emotion being seen through the voice. You know, we all scream when we're upset. We all cry and sob from our gut. And the only thing opera does is just it uses those reactions, those bodily reactions, and makes it into music, which is amazing, really.
I think that's really interesting, especially in the current climate. I mean, we're recording this during the cost of living increase. We're a year or two away out of COVID now, but it's still lingering in different ways, and it's certainly lingering in the conversation still. People looking back to it. Incidentally, actually, I'm going to ask you that question. How did the COVID situation impact you? I mean, I imagine it was pretty horrendous, was it?
Yeah, it was. In a way, I was lucky I was still in education at the time, but it made it incredibly difficult. I lost all of my freelance work, obviously, as many people did. But in terms of just studying and trying to develop as a singer, having singing lessons over Zoom, especially with my Wi-Fi, an absolute disaster. And I just found myself not getting as far as I'd hoped in my degree. And then graduation was all online, and all the emotional difficulties that we all felt. But just singing wise, it was hard. I went back into my first concert afterwards, and I was incredibly nervous to sing Handel's Messiah, which I'd done a million times before. But it all of a sudden just felt very real and very, very scary. And I still, that still lingers a little bit. Just, oh, this could be taken away again at any point. I need to make the most of every single moment I have an in-person singing lesson, which is something I just completely took for granted.
Yeah, and of course online as well. You're very reliant, aren't you, on the quality of equipment that people are listening to you on?
Definitely, and lots of the applications for opera companies, for masters, all those things were also online. So I found myself investing in microphones and recording equipment that now just sits in a cupboard, because obviously now we're back to doing in-person things. And the whole video application thing is really difficult, especially in my mind as a singer, because I, as we've discussed, am very much about the connection with people and the acting and the drama. And if I feel like I'm not connecting with a person, my singing just really doesn't work as well, because, as I've just said, I'm not engaging with those bodily reactions as if I'm actually feeling upset or happy or in love or whatever, because I'm just thinking about the fact that I've got a lens poking at me. So I'm thinking about relax my jaw and make sure my tongue is in the right place and all of those things. So I didn't get that connection with people, and that became very, very difficult then to create a story and create a character and sing well, which was really hard.
Yeah, no, I can totally understand that. Where I was going actually with it before I went completely off piece, which I do all the time, story of my life, was just in terms of the fact that people are going through a tough time right now. Yeah. And I'm a business consultant as part of my day job, etc. And I'm talking to a lot of businesses, and those that trust you to open up are going through a lot of struggles, and particularly around disposable income is reducing because everybody's trying to find the money for the bloody groceries, yeah, and or the electricity bill and or the fuel in the car, etc., etc. By the way, do you think that, or have you seen any impact yet of people cutting back on spending money on things like entertainment and opera and things like that? Has there been any sign that that's waned a little with disposable income reducing or not?
Absolutely. People definitely see, especially opera, as very much a luxury. It's kind of put on a pedestal as being very expensive. And the unfortunate thing about that is then the less people that pay for the regular price seats, the more the prices have to go up, because obviously they're not getting the number of people, but they still have to pay the performers, they still have to pay the venue hire.
Yes.
Which then is a catch-22, really, because then people are less likely to come because they're getting more and more expensive. So yeah, it's been a bit of a scary time. Thankfully, there's been very generous funding bodies. There's also obviously been opera companies that have had large funding taken away, which has been a big problem. But definitely, I think a way of cutting out money, both for the government and for people's own entertainment, has been, oh, just cut out a bit of the arts. That's all right. We don't need that, especially opera.
Well, it's like a domino effect, isn't it? I know of a number of businesses, including in the entertainment arena, where suddenly, like you said, the venue hire has gone up by 36%, which is, a very significant increase. Absolutely. And then somehow that has to be absorbed somewhere along the line. And I suppose like everything, particularly in entertainment, there's that limit, isn't there? It's almost psychological limit a lot of the time rather than real limit in a lot of cases. you know, where it's like, oh, it's an extra 20 quid, so I'm not paying that, even though they can actually afford an extra 20 quid in some cases.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's very interesting, actually. So in terms of your journey and your experiences, is there anything you could share around of what you might call top tips? Oh, that's a good one. Tilly's top tips.
I could start my own YouTube channel. That's a great
There
idea.
you go. Tilly's top tips. I don't have to keep saying that. My teeth will fall out. But Tilly's top tips. So have you got any kind of insights or top tips on anybody coming through, maybe younger or teenagers or whatever, who want to do this for a living, and anything that you think that they could do, should do, that might just increase their chances of making it?
I'd say the biggest thing for me is resilience. And that means, okay, you could get rejected from 20 applications out of 21, but there's always going to be that one place, that one opera company that will accept you, and that will springboard into other things. You'll meet new people. And the resilience also comes from studying as well. It's really difficult in a music college to survive, because no matter how lovely your peers are, you are still in a lot of ways in competition with each other. There are a very limited number of jobs, and there are lots of people wanting to perform and wanting to be a part of it. And the resilience of just saying, it's okay that that person can sing a top C better than I can, because I have my own strengths, and not comparing and not getting competitive about that, because it's crippling otherwise. I've seen people compare themselves to each other all the time, and then they're not focusing on themselves, and then they don't want to do it anymore. They fall out of love with singing. Always remember why you got into it in the first place. Is it because you love performing? Is it because you love singing Mozart? Always remember what the root was, and talk to people. Talk to people if you're feeling down, if you're feeling like it's not going anywhere. Just talk to your friends, talk to your family, your singing teachers, and they will, reaching out is a very scary thing, because it's very easy to just go, well, everyone's going through this, so why should I be the one to talk, because everyone else seems to be coping. But usually people are coping because in the background they're, going through all the same things.
Yeah, and I think what you're talking about there as well is a great tip in life in general. I talk a lot, funnily enough, in business about the same things. About, and I always say the top thing for me in business is resilience, because you will have all sorts of things thrown at you. And I guess it's also overcoming the fear of rejection, isn't it? That imposter syndrome again. And there's a great book by Susan Jeffers that I mention on here quite a bit, called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And it's a very old book now. I think it's 30 years old now or something.
Really?
But even the title, it's a long. I think Susan Jeffers has passed away. That's how.
We get told to read that book all the time. That's a staple.
Yes. You check it out. I think you'll find that it has actually. It's 20, 25 years, maybe more, maybe more. But it's still relevant. And I think obviously in what you might call, what we sometimes call the Instagram world of being judged here, there and everywhere every 5 seconds. I think it's absolutely true. And I think that's a wonderful tip, by the way, what you've just said there, about remember why you're doing it. And do it because you enjoy it. Not because you're going to make money out of it. And then because the money, I guess, will come anyway. If you're good enough and you worked hard enough, the money will come anyway, won't it?
And also, I think as soon as certainly for me, as soon as I got out of that institution, and I loved the institutions that I was in, I learned so much, and everyone was so supportive and friendly. I've been incredibly lucky and well supported, and it's been an incredible 6 years of doing that. But as soon as you step out into an opera company, you realize, oh, hold on. Everybody's here just to make a production, to make music. Nobody's here to judge you on your breath control or, your feet not being in the right place or whatever it is. You're just telling a story. It's as simple as that. You stand up on stage and you tell a story. And if something goes wrong, it goes wrong. Style it out. That's what I do.
Well, I have to say, for a young person, that's such a great mindset. I have to be honest with you. It's a great mindset to have. And inspirational, really, and should be inspirational for other younger people to see you with such a, if I dare use the term, such a mature perspective on it.
That's really kind of you. Thank you.
I'm just saying it as it is. I'm not saying it to be. It's just, you know, I'm a northerner. We just say it as it is. So that's fantastic. So I suppose the last question I'll ask you to finish off then, Tilly, is have you not given up, or are you still hopeful someday you might get into a musical theatre production, or is it unlikely to happen now you've got your voice at a certain point in a certain genre?
I think it's unlikely to happen. I think the only one I could possibly do further down the line was Phantom of the Opera. And, you know, I've always loved Phantom of the Opera, but I think that would now be the only one that I would be acceptable at. And even then, it would be a push. There are incredible musical theatre singers, and I would never dream of trying to do it as well as them, because they've similarly been training since they were 3 or 4 with that specific thing in mind, and they do a great job. And I just enjoy going to watch and singing along in the shower. It's great.
Brilliant. Okay, and you're back to Australia soon, I believe.
Yes, in 3 weeks, 4 weeks.
Ooh. Awesome.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I'm sure we'll keep in touch. And as I say to all my guests, maybe at some stage we'll meet in person. I know that I think based down in Kent. Is that right?
Yes, in Canterbury. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic. Right. A long way from Manchester, but you never know. You never know.
It could only be a train journey away if they're running. So we'll see.
Yeah. I love that if they're running point. That you know. Yeah, good. Fingers crossed and all that. Yeah. Well, have a great time in Australia. I hope you enjoy it. If people want to find out more about you, or maybe get a ticket to an event that you're running, where's the best place to find you then, Tilly, online?
I have a website, which is Tilly Green Soprano, and I also have a Facebook page where I post updates and silly videos and all sorts.
Fantastic. And have you actually got as well any kind of YouTube videos?
Yes, YouTube. Yeah, a few YouTube videos of singing as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so you can actually hear you singing on YouTube as well. Wow. Absolutely. Fantastic. All right then. Thanks very much, Tilly. Really enjoyed talking to you. Really love your name, as I said. Great name, Tilly Green. Tilly Green, brilliant. And but you see, with a name like Phil Croshaw, I'm bound to be impressed with Tilly Green. It's so much more upmarket.
No.
Right. Thanks very much, Tilly. Take care. And thanks for joining us on Passions. Take care.
Thank you so much for having me. Great to meet you.
And you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.